a podcast about product management, user experience design, technology, and more. This is Product by Design. All right, welcome to another episode of Product by Design. I am Kyle, and today we're joined by another guest with us, Karthik Suresh. And welcome, Karthik. It is great to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show.
All right. Well, let me introduce you briefly, and then we'll have you tell us a little bit more about your background. But Karthik is the co-founder of Ignition, which is the world's first go-to-market platform that allows businesses to manage all stages of a product lifecycle, which we'll have to talk a little bit more about that because go-to-market and product lifecycle is, I think, a fascinating topic. But you have extensive experience building and launching products across consumer, enterprise, and data, as well as, obviously doing products, building businesses. But why don't you tell us a little bit more about your experience and the things that you have done?
Yeah. So just to recap my journey so far, I think I started my career as a software engineer, actually. So I have a tech background. And my first job was actually in Wall Street, in Morgan Stanley, and then worked for a bunch of high frequency trading firms. This is right after the financial crisis. Spent about 7 years doing that, and after that went to business school and got into tech. And basically, the first job out of business school was actually to start a company in alternative lending, but that didn't do well, and I exited. Then joined another company called Craft, which is a Series B startup right now, and they're an enterprise intelligence software company. I joined them as a second employee, so really early, and I was there till Series A. So basically built product and operations team there, and saw the whole process of finding the product market fit, and that was a great experience. And after that, I was like, okay, I've been in startups for a while. I wanted to see what it is like to build products at large companies. So joined Facebook. At Facebook, and now it's Meta, of course. And at Meta, I was at the Facebook search team when I began. And then later on, I was in the growth team as a growth PM for Facebook Reality Labs. Which is obviously like now one of the hottest topics in the market, and everything going on in the market right now, and it's how much money Zuck is spending on that division. So that's been interesting to see. But while I was at Facebook, I always felt like the larger companies was never for me, and I had this entrepreneurial itch. I want to start something on my own again, and I met my co-founder Derek through OnDeck, and he was running product marketing for Rippling, and we started brainstorming a bunch of ideas, and that's how Ignition was born. So basically, the idea behind Ignition is to basically give the users a platform to manage all the product launches and all your go-to-market plans in one place. Happy to talk about that more.
Yeah, that's great, and I think we'll definitely have to kind of dive into that because that is. So it's a really great topic and a fascinating one. But before we do, before we kind of dive in and talk a little bit more about your experience and your journey, what are some of the things that you like to do outside of the office or outside of product and product launch and product marketing and all of these other things?
Yeah, outside work obviously has changed quite a bit with time. But for these days, I like to travel. I think that hasn't changed. I like to travel a lot. I was originally born in Bangalore in India. Spent some time there growing up. Then went to college here in the US. Then went to business school in Europe, and then traveled all around Europe. So like to travel a bunch. Now I'm in the Bay Area. Then I like to read a lot of nonfiction books. Just everything, no specific topic, but everything around. All the way from philosophy to managing your financials to product management, of course. So like to read a lot of nonfiction, and more recently I've been into meditation, trying to increase and deepen my meditation practice. So yeah, those are some of the things which I like to do outside work.
Okay, awesome. Well, I'll have some more questions to follow up on that towards the end,
Yeah.
but let's talk a little bit more about some of your experience and some of your journey. Because you mentioned that you started out in engineering, you've worked at various companies, large and small, founded companies and been there from the ground floor. Tell us a little bit more about some of that experience and some of the things that you've learned along the way, from the big to small and from the founding, the engineering to product. What has that journey been like for you? And what have you learned kind of moving from these different companies and different roles as you've gone?
Yeah. Yeah, that's um, it's been a fascinating journey so far. I feel lucky to have experienced the various kind of you know careers and also spending time both at Wall Street and the Silicon Valley. Of course, now everything is in the cloud, so it doesn't really matter. But at least early stage of my career, one of the things which attracted to me towards financial services was just the sheer pace of work and ambition and drive and the hustle mentality. So I just love the energy in New York where everyone is trying to make it and everyone is driven, ambitious, working hard, and it's such a high energy environment. And they like to play hard as well. So I was really driven to that and towards the trading side because there's a bunch of there's also like adrenaline rush towards when you especially when you're younger and you kind of seek that every day or at least every once in a while. I did have my fair share of that. I was involved. So this company, Night Cattle Group, which I worked for, they had I think one of the largest trading losses ever in the history of Wall Street. I think they lost like 400 million in 30 minutes, and while I was working there, part of that team. And that, and I was just like 2 years out of college or something like that. So just gaining exposure to events like that, both good and bad. And there are times, of course, when they made a lot of money too. So this getting exposure was very interesting. But after working there for a few years, I just realized like there was I didn't feel like a purpose. I didn't feel like a mission. And I wasn't passionate because it was all about taking money and making more money versus like building something tangible and substantial for people. And that always bothered me a lot. And so which is why I moved to tech. Um, the other funny thing is like a lot of the people when they get their engineering degrees, they work for the Valley. When they go to the business school, they work for financial services or consulting firms. But I think I did the other way around. It's like I got my engineering degree, worked for financial services, and got my business school degree and worked in tech. So that was also an interesting choice. But I mean, at the end of the day, it was all about for me making an impact, building substantial, and making sure I don't have any regrets. So which got me to move to tech. And and when I moved to tech, it was always about like I was always into startups, always about innovation, always about building something new. And I didn't know where to start at the very beginning. Excuse me. And which is why I think my very first startup actually did not do well, and I think it's more of a playground. But I got to learn a lot during that experience. Everything around what now is like a pretty much template. You understand your user, understand the market, make sure the market is big enough. And so once you build an MVP, test like all those the frameworks about getting a product built and getting it to the market was something I learned, even though the first company did not do well or I exited. And then I could like, apply a lot of that at Kraft, where I was a very early employee there, like literally the second employee. So was building we had to pivot like a soft pivot a couple of times, and finally we found product market fit, and that was a great experience to begin with. And then at large company like Facebook, what I really learned or saw was how to build at scale. It's a completely different challenge. Like you deploy a feature and suddenly you have like 10 million users using that the very next day. So that's very different in terms of thinking and the usage and just the way you think about building the product. So that's something which I really appreciated and learned during my Facebook days. But now again, back to Ignition, where I'm trying to redo the playbook of building a new product and getting into the market. So yeah, it's been quite an exciting journey so far. I think one of the main things is all about like being open to experimentation, being open to taking risks, and then following your heart.
Yeah. I think that's really good. And I want to touch on that for just a second, because I probably followed a kind of a similar path in some ways, starting out actually in banking and financial
That's
services,
right.
and then finding my way more and more into the technology side and into product, and having some similar feelings and thoughts around it, as it sounds like you did, where really trying to find that purpose and the passion behind it, where sometimes that can be more difficult. At least it was for me, working in finance. There's probably lots of people who find that to be like a very fulfilling thing, but others who don't. Talk to us a little bit about the importance of like finding passion and finding fulfillment in what you're doing, and how you've kind of approach that through what through some of the both the career choices and the products you've built and the companies that you've worked for and founded. How have you approached that, and how has it kind of helped guide some of the choices that you've made?
Mhm. Yeah, it's a great question. I think when you're starting off, at least I felt like I had no idea what I wanted to do. It was almost like that's the first job I got on campus, and I took it. Versus like me, deliberately trying to figure out, okay, trying to like go after something because I specifically did not know that okay, this is what I wanted to do. And for me, I think right now I've reached a stage in my life where it's not just about doing something for money or doing something just to keep the lights on, versus it's actually versus something more fulfilling and something which basically really helps me feel like I'm living like a really purposeful life, and also being very helpful and useful to others in the society and the world. And and that change occurred when I was like working in financial services and wanted to go to tech. Again, as you said, like I'm sure, like even some of my best friends are in financial services, and they feel fulfilled working in finance, which is good for them. But for me, I felt like that's not the place for me to be. And even after I moved to tech, it still has been a journey. So even in tech is still a very broad industry. There's like we do everything from fintech to consumer to enterprise to now it's crypto and Web3. So there's so many opportunities. But for me, it was always about building something which people can actually use either daily or weekly and add value to their life. Like that was my core objective when I try to like go find things what I wanted to work on or work for. So it's not just about okay, I run a fund, I take your money, I give you a 10% or 20% return at the end of the year. It's more about like, hey, I built this cool product, app, anything that you are using it, you're showing it to your friends and family, and then it's like I'm providing that service to you and the society in general, and that's what always motivated me. And these days, that's almost essential for me to even get up in the morning and just get to work, because if it's something which does not really appeal to me, or I'm not excited or motivated by it, it's hard for me to even just work on it just for the sake of I'm obviously I'm lucky to be in that position. It's also a privilege to be in that position. I understand that because it's not a choice for everyone gets. So I'm happy and lucky. But now that I have that privilege, I want to make sure I'm focusing my energy and my will in the mission and purpose which I believe in.
Yeah, I think that's great, and it kind of is something that I've been thinking a lot about too, because kind of like you mentioned, probably early on you don't have early on in a career, there might not be quite as much of that ability to say, I'm only ever going to work on the things that I'm passionate about and love. But then kind of as you move forward, like building on that and, narrowing your focus to, it's not just about gaining experience or making money, like you said, but it's really like building up and narrowing in on, the things that are valuable, that you can make money at, that you're passionate about, that you love doing, and really like focusing energy on that, because that's something that I think a lot about now too. Is, as I have done more and more things, like I find I do my very best work and I'm the most excited as I work on things that not only are valuable to like customers and users, but are also things that I love and am passionate about and want to like use myself and show off to people. And so like really finding those things that are like, yes, these are the products that I love and I want to be a part of and I want to make better for other people. And also because, I just find them really exciting. And so I think that is,
Yeah.
those are the kind of things that, especially as you kind of move and progress along in your career, whether you're building a company or you're building a product career, it becomes very valuable and much more exciting to like be focusing in on those things. So I think that's it's a really interesting thing that you've brought up and
Yeah.
talked about.
Is this Japanese framework of Ikigai? I think I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but yeah, just finding those, all the balance between so many different things you want to do, and also this the needs, the Maslow's needs, where you actually go towards the
Yeah.
self actualization. So and product development is no different, and that's kind of where it would be different for others, but for me, it's been getting to actually build products in tech, and that's where I think I found it.
Yeah. No, that's great. So I want to kind of touch on, well, pull on, I guess, a couple different threads, and we can pull on the thread of what you're working on now, because I think that's a really interesting one, especially as it's kind of at the peak of where you have been and what you're focused on, which is Ignition, and it is the uh, the company that you've obviously been focused on and have been building up. And tell us a little bit more about that. What you're doing, what problems you're solving, and what kind of brought you to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, so Ignition is it's a SaaS platform to help you manage all your product launches and marketing plans. What I found during my work experience at startups and Facebook, whether it's a small company or large companies, there are so many tools and processes and frameworks to help you like build products, interface with engineers. So there's like a lot of task management tools, project management tools, product road mapping tools out there, but there's nothing really dedicated to helping you launch a product. Like what happens when you ship a product to production? So what happens next? How do you actually take a product to the market? Because I think that's one of the most underinvested areas right now in most tech companies in general. Because once you build a product, then you still have to figure out, okay, who is your target audience? You need to do market research. You need to figure out how do you position your product with respect to your competitors. Then how do you message the value prop of your product so that the end users actually get it? And then how do you find channels to market your products so that it actually reaches those target audience? So where does your target audience like usually hang out? How do you reach them? And then once you have this plan, and how do you execute it, get all the approvals, make sure you educate your salespeople, your customer support people, make sure everyone's on the same page. It's a huge process, and most of the times it's very fragmented and underinvested in companies. In fact, I would say a lot of the startups sometimes even fail because they invest a ton in product development, but not in product distribution and basically the product marketing side of things. So that's where the idea of Ignition came from. It's like you have all these tools, the road mapping tools. You have AHA, product board, Roadmonk, and obviously in project management you have Asana, Monday, and probably like hundreds of tools in that space. But there's nothing really dedicated specifically for go-to-market and product launches, and that's what this Ignition is about. The one thing I would add is like while I was sitting at Facebook, we were launching one of the Facebook Reality Labs devices, and it was the launch plan was a spreadsheet which had like 100 tabs, and nobody knew where to find anything, like not even like the latest logo. So the way they solved it was a bunch of program managers jumping on a war room and getting like 100 people on a call and just reading out from a checklist saying, hey, did you do that? Did you do this? Where are we with that? Where do you find that? Where do you find this? And it was a nightmare. I mean, the launch did well, but I was like, there has to be a better way to do this. And that's again another inspiration for Ignition.
It's so interesting to me because I've been through this exact same thing. Like when we talk about go to market and product marketing and launches, like you're talking about like a scenario that I'm super familiar with, like this very fragmented process, especially at early stage companies. Like that is, you're describing like the process of like, hey, we're just going to kind of figure it out. Like we'll launch it and like, hey, who's doing this part and who's doing that, and it's like a very, very kind of ad hoc type thing. But as you get to larger companies, you think that they'll have this figured out. But I was having this conversation not specifically about go to market, but about another topic very recently with somebody else about another very, very large company who said the exact same thing. It's like you would think that they would have this figured out, but they don't. And it's kind of one of those things where you have this problem and it's pretty pervasive, like from large companies to small companies. And we all kind of get used to these types of things, whether it's like go to market is just, it's kind of a mess, or other types of things. And we kind of deal with it because that's the way it's always been. And there's not, we have our checklist, or we have our document or our spreadsheet or whatever it is. But there has got to be a better way. And that's, I find it super fascinating that we're finally starting to get some of these really good tools and good things that will actually make these processes like better and sustainable in a way that really hasn't been before. Because the way you're describing it is the way that I think I've always probably done it, and probably most of the people listening have always done go to market, is kind of an ad hoc, like we'll coordinate product and marketing and product marketing if there is product marketing, and sales and whoever else is involved will kind of all get together and do this. But that is not a very efficient way of doing it. So, well, I guess your thoughts on all of that.
It's one of those things where I think the other thing, actually, the other trend is like, I think just product marketing as a function is something which is new and growing. Like 10 years ago, there was no road mapping tools. Engineers were PMs, right? The engineers were product managers, and they're the ones who manage the entire product, the function. But now you have dedicated PMs in pretty much every company, and PMs is like something which is very well known. You literally hire for a PM, even in early stage companies. Which is not true before. So, but now I think PMMs are like PMs, where product marketers are. It's a growing function, and people realize the value of this because they realize, okay, it's no longer an option just to ship the product and hope the users will somehow magically land and start using your product. You really need to invest in your go to market. So, I think even just that function as a product marketer function taking off is just another example of why this is such an important process to invest in. So at the same time, I think there's like PMs in some early stage companies where there are no PMMs, and PMs don't do it themselves, which is also, I mean, I was a PM before, and to be honest, I was not very thorough about this process myself, even though I'm building a product for it. But now I realize, okay, there was actual need. In fact, some of the things we probably left a lot of money on the table, to be honest, by not investing in this process.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's probably the case for all of us, is that it becomes an afterthought. Once we get the product done and ready to go, that just getting it out the door is like, let's just get it out there, and however it gets out, we're fine with. But let's just ship it, and that's kind of where we're satisfied. And that's really not the best way to do it. Like if we can put a good process around our go-to-market strategy and really be as thoughtful with that as we are around our product discovery and our product development process, then we can have a much better cycle of of creating a product, getting it to market, getting the feedback, and then continually making it better and getting it in the hands of the right people at the right time, as opposed to more of the ad hoc ways of doing it, which again, I think we're so many of us are probably familiar with because it's such a pervasive problem, like you've said.
Yeah, exactly. Love for you to try out Ignition at some point.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to. Like, this is one of those things that I keep thinking through, like the way that I've done it. It pretty much in most places in the past, and the way that we're doing it right now is one of those things that it stands for so much improvement that we're going to have to definitely take a closer look. I'm going to have to take a closer look after we're done talking. But with that, I'm interested in kind of what you've seen as you've both worked at and have been working with both small companies and large companies. Like, is there a difference in the kind of the go-to-market strategy and process in startups in startups versus large companies? I know obviously like there's probably some maturity level differences, but what have been some of the big things that you've seen between those two?
Yeah, for sure. I can just talk about like product management and just building products and go to market in general. So there's actually quite a bit of a difference, working as a PM in a startup, because I basically work for a PM at Kraft and a PM at Facebook. So I just want to use those two as examples. I think like a lot of the times people think, hey, I've been a veteran at Google for 10 years, and I'm going to go, be successful at a startup. And it's not really. It's probably the other way around is more easier, where you've been a PM at early stage startup, then probably you can be more successful at Google. But either way, I think both are very, very different. The fundamentals are still the same. You listen to the users and listen to the feedback, identify the right problems, and prioritize right. The fundamentals are the same, but the day-to-day activities are so different in a startup as a big company. In a early stage startup, or even like a growing startup, as a PM, you're really like doing so many things at once, taking on responsibility right from talking to the user, writing SQL queries to pull the data yourself. You're hustling with and trying to make it work with very limited amount of resources. And and then, again, same time you're talking to engineers, writing the product spec, coming up the roadmap, presenting it to the CEO, I think probably directly to the C level. And you're pretty much doing all of these on your own. And it's a different skill set versus in a large company, you have a lot of help. You have probably a dedicated user researcher. You have a dedicated data scientist who's doing the analysis for you. And you have maybe sometimes if it's a larger project, you have a dedicated program manager who is, taking care of the project management. And your job then becomes mainly about stakeholder managing stakeholders and stakeholder alignment. It's literally like making sure like all stakeholders are up to date on what's going on in your team, unblocking your engineers. If your engineers have a dependency on another team roadmap, you go talk to that team's PM to help unblock your engineers, and then go present to execs about what's coming in the next quarter and next year and so on, and planning and setting the KPIs. So a lot of 80% are almost surprised, like even though I was a PM at Facebook, I think about 70 to 80% of my time was in meetings, in the stakeholder alignment. But in early stage startup, it's like you spend a lot of time like actually like building, like doing the work, everything from speaking to customers to pulling the data to building the roadmap. So yeah, I think the very different skill sets. And the one thing I would say, so what I learned at early stage companies is being able to hustle, being able to multitask, being able to like figure out how to get stuff done, even if you don't have the resources. Like, hey, I don't have a designer to work on my website. Just go find one in Upwork and get it done. I don't care, right? That's a very different attitude versus like in large companies, it's all about communication. Like, how do you communicate to take the same message, communicate so that the execs get it, the marketing teams get it, the salespeople get it, the engineers get it, product marketers get it, of course. So how do you take it's like being really good at communicating, being good at unblocking, really good at prioritization. So those are the things which are very important at large companies.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that's exactly right. And that's been a lot of my experience too, working across, some larger companies, and then, obviously working at some smaller companies as well. I'm interested in what some of the things you've learned, especially from in founding companies, and starting. You mentioned starting a company, and then obviously moving on, being employee number two at another, and where you're working now. Um, what have been some of the key things that you've learned through that process? And has there been anything that you wish you knew, when in that first one, that you know now?
Yeah, that's one of the things is like I think the founders and starting companies has been glamorized for the wrong reasons. I just want to be honest; it's not. It's a really long marathon, and it's most of the times there are very few companies who just find product market fit in like month one or month two, but like 95% of the time, it's a long struggle, and it just I wish somebody had told me that it just takes time. It just takes a long time to figure out your product, figure out your customers, figure out your business model, figure out your go to market, figure out is this the right product or you need to pivot. Like just generating the first $1 million in revenue, or even just first 100K in revenue. It could take anywhere from 2 to 3 years or even more sometimes. And that's the part which is missing in all the narratives because you only see when the founders have made it and they're like, oh yeah, you made a great exit and you made millions of dollars, but like the journey is not easy. And also to add to that, I think like 7 or 8 out of the 10 startups fail. So most of them don't even make it to those 100K mark. They probably fizzle out. You probably spent 2 years, you're burnt out, and the startup is dead in a lot of the cases. So yeah, I think that's one of the things. It's just like how hard it is to actually build a company from scratch and then get it going, and that's one of the things which I've just seen and learned. So it's basically the people who succeed are people who can be patient and persevere. Like you just have to keep grinding and keep grinding till you get to the product market fit. Yeah. So that's I would say the number one thing, just like how long it takes. And the second thing is I think is like this is obvious. But it's all about the team. So you need to be very very deliberate in hiring the first 5 to 10 people in your company. They set the tone of everything from culture to the foundation and the values. So it's really important. It's almost like hiring is even more important than getting the right persona or product in place, because if you have the right team in place, you will figure it out. So the second thing, it's so much more important to make sure you hire the right person. At least the first 5 to 10 people, you have the right people and you have the right leadership team in place early on to help you get through this long, struggle. And then the final thing I would say is, I think there's a common graph which you see in the internet. It's like the first 1 or 2 years is a drunken walk. It's lots of ups and downs, lots of highs and lows, lots of emotions. So yeah, just like the one day you feel like you're on top of the world, the other day you're like, what the hell am I doing with my life? So you need to be able to like withstand that ups and downs and the emotional like a roller coaster before things stabilize.
Yeah, I think that's really good. As far as the product market fit goes, as you've gone through a few of these, how have you come to that realization, like when it's finally starting to click, like we've achieved, or we're starting to really get product market fit right?
For me, it's always been about user retention. So it's always been about are the users, whether they're paying for it or not, it's more about are they using it on a daily, weekly basis. So you do like let's say for SaaS products, like 3 month retention, like a 90-day retention, and see like, are they still using it? Are they using it daily or weekly? Are they using it as intended? And what features are they using it? And because if you can show that the retention is high, for me, that's a really good signal for product market fit, because then you can start scaling your user acquisition. And then because in fact, on the flip side, one of the biggest product mistakes people make is trying to scale before they have product market fit.
Yeah.
It's like even before they have good retention, people like prematurely try to put money in ads and like try to like do a product hunt launch and get a lot of people onboarded, but it's a leaky bucket. All of these people are going to churn, and you'd have just wasted a bunch of time and money by not investing in the retention. So I would say that for the number one thing to do is, when you onboard your first pilot set of users or your first champions, is like, how are they using it, and iterate till they're like, they say that they're going to be very disappointed, if you take away the product from them. And that's one thing. And once you have that, then the next one to figure out is like, okay, now can you acquire such users on a scale? Like, it shouldn't be like these are like some very 10 niche users, but there's not a lot of such users in the world, because still even that's not a good market fit. So once you have really good retention is the number one thing, and once you have retention, then can you systematically basically acquire similar users to your platform.
That's great. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Awesome. Well, for those looking to get into either product management or engineering, or even to start their own company, like, what would be the advice that you would give to them, especially just starting out early on?
Yeah, I would say take risk. That's number one advice. Don't be in your comfort zone. Be willing to explore, even though it's something new. Like, don't always try to get a job at Google. It's more about being able to explore. Maybe you find your fit in Web3. Maybe you're really passionate about fintech. Maybe you're passionate in financial services. Like, it just really depends. It's being open to change. Don't worry about not worrying about job security, especially early on, when you have some time in your life. That's something I wished I'd done more. Is like, I wished I had, now I have a lot of responsibilities, I have a family, but before I had none of those responsibilities. So wish I'd taken more risk. Change jobs, do side projects, build some apps on your own, build some side hustles. Go network, talk to different people. Take risk.
I think that's such good advice, and I absolutely love it. I feel the same way, that early on, that's some of the best advice that I wish I would have gotten too. Is that you don't need to play it so safe, especially early on. That you can take a lot more risks and explore a lot more, and that will give you a good base, especially as you grow into a lot of different things. So I think that's really good. You touched on a number of different areas and technologies there, but are there anything that you see like exciting as far as technology or new things coming up in the future that kind of have you interested or excited?
Yeah, the two things I'm very excited about, and so in fact, even trying to see how we can adopt those technologies within Ignition. One is AI, and specifically the generative AI component, which is the GPT-3. And I think I find it fascinating, where for the first time I see like AI at least trying to do creative work. The argument has always been like, look, there maybe the AI and machine learning can automate a lot of the mechanical work which humans do, but they can't necessarily replicate creative work. But again, GPT-3, it's fascinating to see the evolution of that, and I want to follow that and see even how we can adopt that in Ignition. The second is Web3. Web3 is no, I don't really believe in like the Web3, but like the whole decentralization. It's basically allowing any kind of an app, whether it's financial services, whether it's social networks, to be decentralized. and given power back to the users versus having a centralized corporation running it. I think that's super exciting as well. So I think those are the two areas I'm really excited about.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I think those are two fascinating areas as well. I'm looking forward to much more to come in both of those. This has been a really, really awesome conversation. I have a couple more questions like as we wrap up, but before we do, is there anything else that you wanted to kind of add to anything that we talked about or didn't get a chance to talk about?
No, it is a great conversation. Yeah, I think we covered a lot of points. Yeah, I think I'll just say, the audience, give Ignition a spin. The website is haveignition.com, and please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or Twitter. Always open to a chat on pretty much any topic.
Awesome. Well, we'll put those links in the show notes to Ignition to connect with you. Anywhere else that people can find out more about you or anything that you're working on?
Yeah, I mean, basically, I think the best way is the website and my LinkedIn and Twitter handles.
Okay, awesome. Well, yeah, we'll definitely put those in the show notes as well. Okay, well, you mentioned at the very beginning that you are an avid reader across nonfiction and across pretty much anything nonfiction. So I'm interested in anything that you have read recently that you want to share, or anything you've read in the distant past that you'd like to recommend.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about, or maybe recommend two books. One more recent, I read this book called Built by Tony Fadell, and that's definitely a must read because it touches on both the startup side, the corporate side, and everything on recruiting, fundraising, everything you can think of about building companies. So I found that book really good. Then a while ago, I read a couple of books by Nassim Taleb called Fooled by Randomness, and then subsequent book was called Black Swan. And especially as we go through these market conditions right now, it's good to take those books. I've kind of dusted them off and just try to read them again, just to give a perspective of how the markets work. So yeah, those are some of the books I recommend.
Okay. Yeah, we'll put some links in the show notes. I highly recommend those as well. I think Taleb's books are great and probably always super relevant. It's been a while since I've read them, so they're probably worth like revisiting. But all of them in his, I think he calls them the Inserto collection. So he's got like 4 or 5, and those are really good. And I'll give a shout out to Build as well by Tony Fadell. He, like you mentioned, started at a startup and then went to Apple and then Nest, and it's just a great book about his journey and everything. So definitely worth it. Awesome. Well, we also do I don't know if you have any shout outs to any products that you've been using or have been using and have liked or disliked recently as well.
Yeah, I've been dabbling a lot in the Web3 apps, to be honest, recently. Everything from DeFi to NFTs. And I think one of the things I'm most excited about is gaming, use of NFTs within gaming. So imagine you have an NFT, which is like a character, and then you can use that within a game and you can get coins by doing missions, and whether it's a car race or it's a fight or whatever, or it's a strategy game. I think that's really fascinating. So, I was just looking at Aurori the other day and a couple of other games which are upcoming, Blockstars. And I think the combination of, blockchain, NFTs, DeFi, and gaming, that's incredible. I'm really looking forward to innovation in that space.
Yeah. Totally agree. I think there's so much innovation and things that are to come. It's going to be super exciting to see. Okay. Well, Karthik, it has been an absolutely great conversation. I appreciate talking to you and all of the insight that you had. I think this is going to be another really, really good one that has tons of great stuff for everybody. So appreciate it. Thanks again for all of your insight and discussion. And thank you, everybody, for listening.
Yeah, thanks, Kyle.
Thanks again for listening. If you like the show, be sure to follow or subscribe on your favorite podcast app. You can follow the show on Twitter at Prod by Design. That's prod_by_design. You can follow me at Kyle Larry Evans on Twitter as well. If you want more product conversation, check out my newsletter, Product Thinking, at productthinking.cc. You can follow me on Medium at Kyle Larry Evans as well, or check out my Medium publication, Product by Design. Thanks again.